Hey gang, how you doing? It's warm-up time. Good afternoon. Actually, no, it's the morning. It's morning here. Actually, thanks to our guest Ryan Stegman, who happens to be an early riser like myself, not one of these lazy artist bums that doesn't get up till noon or 1 or 2. Who knows? Anyway, how you guys doing today? It's a new week. An absolute new week. So it's we are now on issue 13, lucky issue 13. And I think it's great that we have on lucky issue 13 Mr. Venom himself, the Steg, Ryan Stegman. For me, social distancing day 43. Yeah, loving it. Going a little nutty here. So hope you guys are holding it together a little bit better than me. So today, as I said, we have Mr. Ryan, and I rarely use the word Mr. And in his case, I don't know why, but I like to say Mr. Ryan Stegman, but I just call him the Steg because it sounds cool, and he needs to sound cool because he is a cool guy. I just a couple of things to put out there before we get to Ryan. So over the weekend, the only time I get out is when I'm walking the dogs, and New York is just an incredible place, right? I mean, everybody's social distancing, but at the same time, some people are trying to get their exercise in. And I was walking through one of the quieter, I mean, they're all quiet side streets right now, but I was walking through one of the quieter side streets, and I'm hearing this noise, this back and forth, like thwop, thwop, thwop noise, and I can't figure out what it is. And my dogs are going crazy. And then I start walking, and I notice that there's an open air parking lot, and by that I mean in New York, like in a lot of major cities, you have parking lots that are usually underground indoor parking lots, but they're also on occasion outdoor parking lots, open air. There are not many in the city, left in the city, but this was an open air parking lot, and the noise is echoing from in there, and we walk by there, and the dogs are going nuts because there's this young couple playing full court tennis in the parking lot. There were no cars there, so they were making the best of it. And there was no net, but they were just they were really good too. They were batting the ball back and forth, back and forth. And the thing that I love the most is that they had their surgical medical masks on just to make sure that everybody was safe as well. So a big thumbs up to those two. I wish I'd taken a video of it, but I was in such awe of them playing tennis in a parking lot. It was the most New York thing ever. So another thing I want to put out there for you guys, I am trying to get Christopher Priest to come on this show. If you guys don't know who Christopher Priest is, please look him up. So much of the Black Panther movie has so much to do with his creativity when we launched Black Panther with Marvel Knights. So I'm trying to get him on the show. And with Priest, it's always a lot of like, I don't know if anybody likes me, if you want to hear from me. And so do me a favor. He's not on social as far as I know. So do me a favor. On Twitter, just tweet me. Or on Facebook, send me a message saying, we want Christopher Priest, okay? Please do this because I will clip these all and I will send them to him so that he can see that he is loved out there, because I know we all love him, especially in the creative community. He is one of my idols. He's one of my early mentors. So I want to get him on the show. So let's show him some love, okay? But he's not a social guy. He's not technologically savvy, so he says. But I'm going to try to get him on here, okay? So if we do, it'll be a riot because he's got, not only does he have incredible stories from the past, but he's so knowledgeable about the world of comic books. And he's one of those people who just doesn't understand the incredible influence he's had on the industry. So I want to get him on here. Okay, so before the Steg, you guys can see it right here, right? The Marvel.com / Love Comic Shops. As always, I'll leave that up there for now. If you go there, you will see a number of comic shops. The list, by the way, the list is constantly being updated. You'll see comic shops either in your area or elsewhere that are offering whatever services they possibly can within their community. A lot of it's mail order. And so guys, please support your local comic shops. They're out there, they're working, and we're all going to be back. Okay. So again, before getting to the Steg, I want to remind you guys, Twitter, Facebook, I always ask for questions ahead of time, a day ahead of time. So make sure to go there and ask questions for the upcoming guest. I will create a thread. Also, I can't see your thread on YouTube But if you guys want to ask questions, I got folks at Marvel who are checking those out. If there's any questions that aren't duplicates of what we already have, they will make sure to text me those questions. So, without further ado, he is going to unmute himself now, and we are going to go to the man himself, the Stag. Ryan, how are you, man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. You need to shift a little bit. Your face is let's see, that way. Yeah, perfect. Okay, good.
Right here?
Yeah, yes. There you go. So, Ryan, how you doing, man? Now, where are you? You're in Michigan, correct?
Yep.
Awesome.
Michigan, near Detroit.
What's the social distancing like over there? What's going on?
Well, we haven't left our house, I feel like, in a month and a half. So we sometimes sit across the street from our neighbors and talk to them outside, but really we're just home all the time.
Do your neighbors know what you do for a living?
Yeah, some of them do. The ones that we're friends with. Yeah, it gets around. The word gets around pretty quick.
Yeah, some guy drawing comic books over there.
Yeah.
So, so you guys have been in lockdown basically, right? And what's your mental state right now?
It only started to get difficult, I feel like, last week when I started to realize because it's been too cold to be outside much, but, this is kind of, I don't know. I stay at home and work all the time anyway. Really, I'm just not going to conventions now. Yeah. So everything's pretty normal. I just kind of miss seeing my family and everything. But, we get on Zoom and FaceTime and all that. So
yeah, I keep saying, it's one thing, when you work from home all the time, but then it's another thing when you work home all the time, knowing you can't really go out.
Yeah.
It's just the knowing that you can get out is easy on the brain, I guess.
Right.
So I want to talk about you're gonna do a tutorial for us, right? You're gonna show us a little how to draw Venom kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Because who better than you? So, but before that, I want to delve a little bit into your career because I think you're just a quintessential work your butt off all the way to success, or to at least what you consider success. And I think it's really important for young creators, again, whatever field you're in, it doesn't have to be comic books, to hear stories like this because you're a guy who's really, really, really worked your way up the ladder, so to speak, at Marvel. But what were you doing before comics? I mean, what's your history? What's your schooling? I actually, you're a mystery to me before Marvel. So I want to know.
So it was about age 15 that I decided that this is what I wanted to do. But of course, my parents were they were supportive, but also go to college, get a real job. So I did go to Michigan State University. I got a degree in English. I had 7 different majors while I was there because every time a major got difficult, I was like, well, I'm going to be a comic book artist. So why would I do this? As though it was going to be easy.
Yeah. By the way, when you tell that story next time, you just say, I went to Michigan State. I was on a football scholarship, but then you gotta pad those stories a little bit. So I'm sorry, I interrupted. So you had 7 different majors.
So I finished with an English degree because that was the easiest way to get out at the end when I was like, I have to graduate. Mm-hmm. And I also love, I've always been a big reader, and I actually kind of wanted to write comics as well, which I've done a little bit of. Right. But then I got out of college and I went and moved back in with my parents. They were thrilled. It didn't last too long because I started dating my wife at the time, and she had a real job, so I got to move out and we moved in together. But so I was drawn in their basement, basically working overnight because that kept them out of my hair and me out of their hair. So we kind of had different schedules. And I also at the time worked for a little while in a stock room at Crate and Barrel. And then I was about 23 or 24 and I started getting work here and there, but nothing I didn't have to pay taxes basically because I wasn't making enough.
Right.
And I did a book called Midnight Kiss for Marcosia Comics, which is a British publisher. Mm-hmm. It was a 5-issue series. And then I parlayed that into this job for the Dable Brothers company, who were doing all these novel adaptations. And I started working on Magician Apprentice novel adaptation. And on my very first issue, which was, I think, issue 3 or 4, I can't remember, all of a sudden, Marvel bought the Dable brothers. And so all of a sudden I had a Marvel editor, which was Mark Paniccia. Um, and so I was doing that novel adaptation for quite a while. I mean, longer than I think it's like 13 issues or something like that. And Mark, when it was wrapping up, I think he saw that because I was always asking questions like, how can I improve? What do you want to see me do better? And I think he liked that because that's not, typical, I guess. And I would actually implement the things that he told me to do. And so he would keep me afloat. He gave me a Marvel Adventure story here, and then a second Marvel Adventure story. Then we went back and we did a little more Magician Apprentice. It was just called Rift War this time.
Right.
And then when we finished that is when I did Incredible Hercules for Mark's office.
Okay.
And then from there, She-Hulk, and it just I stayed afloat.
You're going too fast by graphics, man. You're going way too fast by graphics. So
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I'm just kidding. I was just kidding. So, I'm just showing some of your Hercules work here, and here's a double-page spread of She-Hulk. So go ahead. I'm sorry. So you're on She-Hulk now.
Yeah. So we did. I started doing backup stories. They were actually in Incredible Hulk issues, and that was when. So I was working with Harrison Wilcox, who was Jeff Loeb's assistant, and Jeff Loeb started to notice my stuff. So I think that, just having somebody like that notice your stuff was, huge for me. I remember even in an interview somewhere, he said something about, I was vanity searching my name, as we do. And he said something about that I was somebody to keep their eye on or whatever. Yeah. So that was great.
So now, how did it feel as you start to graduate from the licensed stuff to suddenly being just playing in the Marvel sandbox? I mean, was Marvel the place you wanted to be, or you just wanted to be a working pro?
Oh no, I wanted to draw Spider-Man. That's my whole life's goal.
Right.
Which I got to do a little bit of with Marvel Adventure Spider-Man, but it was kind of funny doing Marvel because I did these Rift War books, the Magician Apprentice stuff, and it's this fantasy stuff, which that wasn't necessarily what I envisioned myself doing.
Right.
And so it's very difficult for me. I mean, I worked my butt off doing it and did the best that I could. And I think I ended up doing a pretty good job. But as soon as I started drawing Spider-Man, I was like, oh yeah, I get this.
Right.
This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Because every sample I had ever done was Spider-Man, always 100% of the time. So it was like, all of a sudden I was just like, I know what I'm doing now. And so there was actually like a pretty rapid progression from there.
Yeah,
because I was doing what I was supposed to.
Now, what was the feeling with your parents once you were, here you are at Marvel, you're now, working, you're doing Spider-Man, you're getting pretty regular work, you're getting some notoriety. Did that change your whole perception on everything?
They were always extremely supportive, also very confused by the whole thing. Like it's not like they were big. My dad was a comic book fan
was he?
when
That's
he was
cool.
young, but he didn't know anything about the artist or how that worked.
Right.
I think that the thing that I could point to was he had a Forbes magazine one time that, that's where his head was at. He's a businessman. And he had a Forbes magazine and Todd McFarlane was on the cover as like somebody who had made money outside of, the normal business avenues. Right. And I was like, see, you can make, obviously Todd's super rich and, all that, but I think they understood from there. But then when I started to get notoriety a little bit, once I started paying taxes, I think that they were like, okay, he's going to be all right.
He's going to be all right. Yeah. So you're graduating from She-Hulk. You're doing some Spider-Man. You actually even went to Amazing Spider-Man at a point, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a pretty cool story. So I was doing the She-Hulk stuff, and then I knew that was getting wrapped up at issue 4. We did a 4-issue series, and I didn't know what was coming next. And I was 27. My wife was pregnant with my son, Oliver, my first. And the day that he was born, at the end of the day, being the bad father that I am, I did check my emails. And there was an email in there from Steve Wacker saying, how would you like to draw an issue of Amazing Spider-Man? So on the same day I was born, I get offered this thing, and I'm
That's
like,
great.
what in the world is happening? I was lightheaded.
Right.
Of course I wanted to draw that. So then I started working on that, and he was kind of like, um, I guess I did skip over that I did some X-23 between there. I forgot about that. But anyway, uh, he took an interest in my work. It's one of the best issues I've ever worked on. One of Dan Slott's best issues. It was a very heartwarming story about Betty Brant and Peter. And I really got to flex my storytelling abilities. And so Steve was like, well, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? And I was like, Spider-Man, duh.
Right.
Everybody wants to do Spider-Man. And so he was like, okay, let me see what I can do. And he kind of, he didn't say much for a couple of weeks. And then he came back to me and he said, would you like to do Scarlet Spider? Of course, that's perfect. And so we did Scarlet Spider. And then while I was doing Scarlet Spider, he again, was asking me about what I wanted to do. And they had offered me Fantastic Four to wrap up Jonathan Hickman's run. And I said, well, yeah, I really want to do Amazing Spider-Man. That's all I want to do.
Yeah.
And so then he said, I moved some things around, and you're going to be doing Amazing Spider-Man, what he didn't tell me at the time was that it was going to be Superior Spider-Man.
Right.
So that was
so this is Wacker did this? Steve Wacker?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I mean that shows a lot of insight and reason on his part. And Wacker he's just a loathsome human being. I mean, he was truly one of the worst editors, I hired up there.
He did great things for me, but I hate his guts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody that likes Wacker, and I'm surprised you're actually telling the story and including him in it, because usually we just like this, I never talk about the fact that I hired him and brought him in and stuff, because it's just one of those things that I look back on and go, put that in the hall of bad moves, But good. I'm glad he actually did something good for a change. That's great.
Yeah.
Good.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say he was really a champion of my work at the time too, which was great. I kind of had two. I had Panici at first, and then Wacker kind of took the reins from there and helped me along.
It's like when I look at the people in my life, right? If you were to ask me, who's your nemesis in life, I'm like, oh, it's Steve Wacker, without a doubt.
Right.
There's no question that Steve Wacker is my Doc Ock, my Doctor Doom, my whatever. It just don't really care for the guy. So now you're on Superior Spider-Man, right? And well, wow, right? Literally, it's from the outside looking in, I'm watching your career. You're doing that thing which I think really smart creators do, which is you're taking your work is getting better, right? You're very, very fast, right? So you're really prolific. Your work is getting better and better, but you're also taking projects. You're not taking projects that are step downs, right? Which I see sometimes people do by mistake, or maybe that's all that's being offered. But you're getting projects that one builds upon the other, builds upon the other, builds upon the other, as your skill level also is improving as you're doing this day to day. And it was fun watching you go through the Marvel system, because, as we do have a system in place that as we bring in young artists and writers, we try to do this for them as well, which is make sure that the next project builds upon the next. Sometimes you can't guide people in that direction, but you were definitely someone who was sort of with the program, whether you knew it or not, right? Because we have this whole talent division that tries to build up careers that way. Also, you're a sweetheart. You're easy to work with. Your demeanor is always great. You're willing to work your butt off. So now Superior Spider-Man. So what happens next, man? You're on this book. It was big. It was a big book.
Yeah, it was huge. It was crazy. The amount of attention all of a sudden that was on my work and what I was doing. That really was the moment that I felt like, oh, I'm gonna actually do this for the rest of my life. That's great. Yeah. We went to Wolverine. I launched new Wolverine #1. And then I kind of left that one a little early, but that was mainly because my second kid was born. So my wife went into labor while I was working on that. And then so I was just kind of like,
right. Did you check your email the day he was born to see if you got anything else?
Yeah. Yeah. It was Batman that time.
Yeah.
I know what I'm talking about there. Uh, but no, yeah. So then I went on to do Inhuman, which was a cool book that kind of got a little overlooked, but I still am really proud of what we did on there.
Yeah,
I created a bunch of cool characters and stuff, which has always been a dream of mine to
yeah.
create characters that live for a long time. And then Donnie killed them, so um,
Oh, that Kate's.
yeah. Then I think it was after that was Uncanny Avengers, and then I went to Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, to Venom Inc., and then Venom the regular series,
Right.
which is
Now,
when I kind
what
of
was
came home.
what was the we'll bring up Donnie Cates here, right? Because Donnie is really sort of your co-conspirator these days, right? Hang on, I'm trying to get the graphic off your face. So what was the first? When was the first time you and Donnie worked together? Did you work together first, or did you meet each other first and then decide to work together? How did that team up come along? Because you two guys, every once in a while you get a writer artist that team up and they become sort of synonymous with each other's work. I immediately, Bendis and in recent memory, Bendis and Bagley come to mind, right? On
Right.
their Ultimate Spider. So when did you and Donnie? How did that team up happen?
That was kind of interesting because we kind of ran in the same circles. It's like I'm really close friends with Daniel Warren Johnson, who does a lot of stuff right now, like at Skybound and stuff like that. But he had done a book with Donnie called uh, I'm blanking on the name right now. It was a trucker book from Dark Horse,
Right.
Ghost Fleet. That's right. And so we had met through Daniel at Emerald City Comic Con, and Donnie was like this sort of younger creator, and he was one of those guys that feels like he's hooked up to electricity while he's talking to you, where he's like telling you everything, and you're
Yeah.
like, wow, that was an experience, like. I really liked him, but we didn't talk much beyond that, except on Twitter. We would, I would joke around with him or whatever. And then at one point he said something about on Twitter about he had just turned in the most important thing of his career, and I said, "What is it?" And he DM'd me and said, "It's a Venom." And I said, "You're writing Venom?" And I was like, "Why am I not drawing that? Like I want to do that." And so they had offered me a few things at that point, and it was the first time in my career I had ever turned anything down because I just wasn't
Cool.
finding
Yeah.
the exact right fit.
Yeah.
And
By the way, a
then,
difficult thing to do, right?
yes, very much so. Yeah, because you're always like, well, that'll be cool. It's cool. It's
Yeah.
comics. It's superheroes. Um, and then so they offered me Venom, and even then I was a little still like, I don't know yet. And then they said, Donnie's going to call you, and he called me and he told me all about the Venom Dragon and the
Yeah.
Necro Sword and all that stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, that is exactly what I'm
Yeah.
doing. And then from
I
that point on, we just got along
I,
famously.
I
So.
could hear Donnie's voice pitching that stuff because you're right. It's
Oh
like Donnie's like supercharged when he's
yeah,
describing his stories.
one of the best. He's amazing at pitching stories. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's really a cool thing. We do that on. I mean, I'm not to plug my own podcast or whatever, but we do that sometimes. We
No,
do
go ahead, plug it.
character.
What's the name of
Okay,
your
okay.
podcast?
Stegman and His Amazing Friends is a podcast that we have on iTunes. But one of the cool things that we do is we'll do character creation, where we just get like a name, and then Donnie and I will create a character. And I like to do it because I like to show people what Donnie is like in those
Right.
pitch meetings where
Right.
everybody gets so excited because he's so good at it.
That's cool. So here you are. You are now drawing Venom, and I think we all discover, maybe you discover it too, that as much as you want to draw Spider-Man and love Spider-Man, you're kind of born to draw Venom, dude.
I agree. Yeah.
The combination of you two has really taken this character, a character that for the longest time, it's sort of a little behind the scenes history. You might be aware of some of this stuff too, right? But Venom, when it was introduced, I mean, Venom was the coolest character on the planet. Everybody loved the look of it. It's the big fangs, the big the slobbery tongue, the eyes, the whole black Spider-Man of it all. And the problem with Venom was that he was so popular, but he was a villain, right?
Right.
So you're sitting there. Marvel as a company is trying to figure out, how do we make him into a hero, because he is a villain, and they struggled with that for a really, really long time, and it has some close calls, some misses and stuff. And you guys came in and really, really turned the character into this sort of dark anti-hero heroic character, and really gave the character some soul.
Right.
Can you tell us? Were you? I know Donnie had a lot of these ideas, but I'm sure you were part of that creative process too. Because knowing you two guys,
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of push and pull there, right? Where
Right.
you're symbiotic yourselves, right? So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about that? How you came upon this version of Venom? Because clearly it struck a nerve with readership, and clearly the book has done gangbusters for your careers and in sales and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so one of the first things that happened early on was if you look at my stuff on Venom Inc., which was the series that I did just before this, where I first drew Venom, I was doing that version of Venom that like Joe Mad does that I love so much. This
Yeah.
is like he's a monster, he's a beast, like, and I was drawing this sort of McFarlane-y Eddie Brock who with the big thick eyebrows and the he just looks like a big doofus,
Right.
a big oaf, like a you know I don't know, like a bodybuilding idiot. And I was drawing him like that at first, and then we were both kind of like, I don't feel like that's right for this because what we're trying to do is humanize him.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did immediately was we took Eddie and we kind of I made him look less dumb, a little more handsome, and then also in the costume, he is no longer a monster, which I actually love the monster look, but
Yeah.
for this it felt inappropriate because he is I wanted you to know there's a human being in there. So it was another thing that we did was I made his expressions less extreme all the time. So he's
Right.
not always the full. We even have him sometimes where his mouth is just like tiny, where and I made it so that his eyes could emote, so they're not like that painted on look.
Mhm.
I wanted all these things to humanize him, and make him, because that's what Donnie was doing with the story.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's kind of how we crossed over. And if we would have done it another way, if I would have stuck with the over the top version, I think that it could have really taken away from what we were trying to do.
Mm. That's awesome, man. So, and again, I think the humanizing of the characters is the quintessential Marvel formula. But this is, I've talked about this in previous streams. Is sometimes it may not have been this stream. I don't know. I'm confusing my streams at this point. But sometimes you just don't know whether a book or a team is going to reap success, right? I mean, here's a
Mm-hmm.
character like Venom that generally, on the onset, Venom will sell well because people want to see Venom. But then, there's drop-offs in sales, or the stories don't quite click. But you guys were one of those situations where it was a combinations breed success, and it was that just like you just don't know when you put it together, but it's that sort of black alchemy kind of formula that we
Yeah.
put you guys in a petri dish and you just exploded. We're like, wow, look at
Right.
those two ingredients work,
Right.
and you guys really ran with it. So then what was next? So here you guys are on Venom. You're rocking the world. You're starting your own podcast. I'm
Yeah.
jealous. I'm very late to the game. You've had some great guests on that podcast, I have to say.
Oh yeah, you were one of the first.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Oh, that's right. I forgot all about that. So moving on. So what happens next, sir?
So we continued on Venom. I mean, I'd like to do this for a long time. Donnie has obviously like a 10-year plan on this book, as he likes to do. But so then we ended up breaking out one of the main stories into Absolute Carnage, the event that we did last summer, which was awesome.
Yeah.
As you can tell by the title, Maximum Carnage to Absolute Carnage. What a kid like me, like I was raised on that Maximum Carnage. So, but yeah, we did that series, and then I took a little break just because it was getting hectic. And now we're working on something else that I can't say, but
Right.
It's Venom related, and it'll be announced soon enough. So
Cool. Awesome, man. So so you're going to do a little tutorial for us, right?
yeah,
Cool.
I'm gonna draw some Venom.
All right. You want to switch over your camera?
Yeah.
Cool, man. You switch over. All right. We got nothing, but you're there. Here we go. All right. Full screen. You're on, man. So actually, you know what? I want to I'm going to put you on split screen for a second because before you start drawing, I want to show a couple pieces of your art here.
Okay.
So hang on. Well, one of the things that I'm gonna I'm gonna kiss your butt here for a little because I love your stuff, and one of the things that I love about your artwork is the fact that you have this incredible energy to it,
Hmm.
and even panels where it's just people talking, there's always motion, right? It's that Jack Kirby DNA that we
Right.
have at Marvel, that when we find artists that could tap into that, and you don't, I'm not saying you draw like Kirby, you don't draw like Kirby at all, right? But you have
Right.
that same energy where things are always in motion, even if it's just people walking down the street, people sitting at a table, and that motion is very rarely ever backwards. It's always forward, right? So
Hmm.
so so I love this sort of the venomized beast here,
Hmm.
where Venom, pardon me, it's just you can feel that slobber coming
Right.
at you, right? You know it's going to splatter you in the face. It's going to be disgusting, but it really is. You bring that three dimensionality to the two-dimensional image, and I see that in every piece of your artwork, right? Even a
Hmm.
cover like this, I'm going to enlarge this because I think this cover of the sort of demon winged or the dragon venom is indicative of this, right? Because
Right.
that cityscape in the bottom could have been a very simple one point perspective, right?
Uh-huh.
And all the lines could have been vertical, but you went with this crazy. This is 3 point, isn't it? It's at least two.
Yeah.
Yes, three
It's a
point, right?
fisheye. Yeah.
Right. So and just all the buildings are tapering up, and the motion takes you right up to the top of that tower, right? Or your eye follows right down into that cityscape. But no matter what, it gives it an energy and not a stagnant feel. Everything is in motion in your stuff. Again, I'm going to show another piece here. Let me blow these up since I can. Um, Again, this is like the venomized the dragon venom sort of crashing through. Everything is in motion.
Hmm.
The rain, the characters. I could feel, and these are your pencils, right? So you can certainly feel the energy that you're putting behind it.
Hmm.
But let's go to one of the ink pieces. Again, the sort of dragon venom, I guess we're calling it.
Hmm.
Crashing through a wall, and it's just a giant gaping venom mouth about to devour our venom. But the
Hmm.
motion is ridiculous. Your use of typography here, it's just everything is exploding off the page when it needs to explode off the page. I'm gonna keep going because I love this stuff. Really simplistic, right? We ask artists to do covers with two characters entwined and tangled, and you're one of the best at doing this. And look, I mean, I've drawn that Scarlet Spider figure, right? I've drawn some poses similar to that, and when I look back on them, I'm like, anatomically, I know the body can't twist that way. I know the legs can't
Right.
move in that way, but it doesn't matter because what you're trying to capture is
Hmm.
several motions. At least for me, I think it's the same with you. You're trying to capture several motions of several moves of the leg, several areas where the leg
Right.
might eventually be in one shot. So if you were to break this down anatomically, and I know you could do this, you go, well, yeah, that leg is clearly detached from the hip, but it
Right.
doesn't matter because
Hmm.
it looks great. And the lean on Craven moving back, the staff, on the back of the head, all that stuff is just so cool. And I think again, when the viewer sees it, when the reader sees it, they don't quite get what it is you're doing. They're not supposed to, right? They're just supposed to
Right.
look at this image and say, why? They may go, why is it exploding off the page? Or a young artist may be looking at this going, why is his exploding off the page and not mine? Well, it's because Ryan's been doing this for a while, and he's
Right.
learned from mistakes, but he gets it, right.
Right.
Now I'm going to go on a limb here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to show. This is probably my favorite cover, only because I know you swiped this from a story of mine, which is inside. I guess it's the venom dragon again, right? The big tongue coming out of. I'm kidding you, but I did a Punisher story where it all takes place at a dentist office, and the camera's inside a guy's mouth
Right.
for a bunch of pages. But I love this, and again, even though the tongue is going away from us, the motion of this image is still drawing us in. It's all in motion, right? You've got
Hmm.
you've got the swirling smoke in the background, and you got the look on Eddie's face, and this is just not gonna be good for him. Um, and again, so one last piece, and then I'm going to ask you a question, and I bet you I know the answer to this too. So this I love this piece of yours. This Cable versus Captain America.
Hmm.
The graphic nature of it. You something about the solid black on cap. It's something that that isn't, artists don't do enough, I think. And I
Hmm.
think it's just beautifully a beautiful graphic cover. It works in black and white. You don't need any color on it whatsoever, but you understand how to use the silhouette of black and white. So I'm going to go back to full screen now, and I'm going to ask you this question. So I'm going to go
Hmm.
on the limb and say you were a reasonably athletic guy. You probably played.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
So what was your sport?
Basketball.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could tell that you're at least somewhat athletic by the way that your characters move. Um,
Hmm.
it's something that I discovered when I was in art school, um, and I took an animation course, a history of animation course, and they talked about the great animators, especially the early Disney animators, and how these guys all belonged to like amateur baseball league, and the animators always won the championships because they were great athletes, which made sense
Really?
because they understood motion, right? So I
Hmm.
think artists in particular that are doing comics, the ones that are athletes, and it can be anything. It can be martial arts. It can be baseball.
Hmm.
They tend to. I mean, this is not an absolute rule, but I think the ones that are athletic tend to convey action a little more convincing than others. It's like any of the rules. I remember. I think it was Michael Golden who was critiquing my artwork once, some actual pro work that I was doing, and he said to me, I had a character shooting a gun, and he said to me,
Hmm.
"You've never shot a gun before, have you?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." He's like, "I could tell by the way that your character's holding the gun, the way the gun is recoiling." He's like, "You've never shot a gun before." He's like, "You should go to a gun range." Because you have to draw guns when you do comics, right? You have to draw weapons. Go to a gun range and experience what it's like. And he was absolutely right.
Really?
Yeah, and I remember when I first saw John Romita's work, not the first time, but when I saw John Romita's work on Daredevil, when he was doing that run with Ann Nesenti, and I could tell that Romita had to have been an athlete. And then we spoke later on, and then we played ball together, and he was absolutely a phenomenal athlete. So you could see it in the motion of his
Right.
characters. But anyway, enough of that. So you're going to show us a little how to draw Venom, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Cool. So let's see what you got here, kid. You
All
know.
right. Yeah, drawn for Joe Quesada. This is not nerve-wracking at all.
Yeah, we'll see if there's a job for you in the future. So while you're sketching away there, let me ask you, who were your influences um, before you got into comics, and did that change later on?
My main influence was when I was younger. I was obsessed with animation. I wanted
Okay,
to be an animator
okay,
um, for a long time. Like I said, I really got into comics at 15. Prior to that, I didn't have much experience with comic books,
mm,
which I don't know why. My dad, as soon as I got into them, he's like, "Oh yeah, I have a ton of those in the attic," and he gave me, these boxes and boxes of comic books.
right,
Um, but yeah, I was super into animation. So really, Disney animation was what I was into. I was an animation snob from the
okay,
earliest I can remember. And then I saw a documentary where they all were working in like an office, and it looked like a real job. And I was like, wait a second, I'm not
yeah,
sure I want to do that. And then I got really into comic books, and I was right away, super into Todd McFarlane right
mm.
off the bat. You were one of my first favorite artists.
Oh, thank you.
Ash was huge at the time.
Oh, cool,
That
thank you, man.
first that first Ash image I saw, I think the one where he's like standing in snow or something like that.
Okay,
You know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
Is like one of my favorite comic book images, and full of motion, like what we were talking about,
yeah,
type of stuff that I try to emulate. Um, um, yeah, I got really into image comics.
mm,
So basically, my favorite artists, you can always pick them out. They're going to be the guys that draw sort of cartoony with
yeah,
realistic rendering.
yeah,
So motion is key. So like
mm.
your J. Scott Campbell's, your Joe
Joe
Madureiras.
Matt, I was gonna say, yeah, I can see
Yeah.
the Joe Matt in your stuff.
I later got into Michael Golden, and he's probably my touchstone for what the ultimate of what I would like my art to look like.
Yeah,
His nom stuff is um,
crazy.
pretty much that first issue. I think is the best, in my opinion, the best illustrated comic book of all time. Like I just can't.
Yeah. Well,
I don't even know how he did that.
he managed to mix the cartooniness
Hmm.
of a cartoony style in a hyper realistic world. I mean,
Hmm.
everything in that particular book is is researched and referenced and I mean they had to get it right, but yet he manages to do it in that cartoony style, which I think works especially when conveying the expression on the soldiers' faces, the acting,
Yep.
of the
Yes.
soldiers. So hey Ryan, so you're left-handed, right? I just want to make sure our images aren't
Yeah.
reversed. Okay, could you shift a little bit to your right because we're getting yeah, that's perfect, yeah, because
There you go. Yeah.
we're getting too much blinding light on that left corner. Cool. So now
Okay.
you didn't do I mean you've been drawing this character for a while now. So there wasn't a lot of structure outside of just sort of the shape of the skull. Now is this how you approach an actual page? You're going in there, or are you doing small layouts? How do you approach it?
Well, I will do a thumbnail for sure. Well, so my process on a page is I start digital. I do a thumbnail. I make that a little bit bigger, and then I do this thing which is I'm not even sure it's necessary, but I make sure that everything's overlapping in a pleasing way.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Make sure that all the motion is how I want it to be. Um, and then I will go in and pencil it tighter, at which point I print it out, and that's when I finish it. So when I'm finishing it, I'm basically just doing lighting effects and stuff.
So just for the uninitiated, when you say finish, you mean you ink over it, correct? Um,
I don't ink my own stuff right now. I have in the
okay.
past, but
Okay.
it's finished pencils.
Finish
Yeah.
finish pencils. Okay. So you do your finished pencils over a printout of your
Hmm.
layouts. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Now when you do the original thumbnails, right? How big do you do them?
Um, I would say so. I'll show you on here, like probably about that big.
Okay. And then from there you go to full page drawn size.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no. So that before I print it out, I'll go. I zoom in, but like the very first thumbnail is usually about
Okay.
that size, and then it's all whatever, and then I blow it up a little bit and
Okay.
draw over it,
Yeah.
do what I was talking about, and then yeah.
Yeah.
So before I'm going to the final board, I'm drawing pretty big.
Got it. Yeah, my process, and it's funny how these things get handed down, right? Because it was never told to me by Neil Adams, but I had other people who say, "Well, this is how Neil Adams does it," right?
Hmm.
And I saw some logic in that. So I would do exactly what you're doing, which is a little bit, like a double postage size stamp, double postage size, yeah, whatever. And I would do a quickie layout that way, and then I would blow it up. The next level is I would blow that up to, or Xerox up to printed page size. And
Hmm.
the logic I always heard behind that, which sounds very sound to me, is that when you start tightening at I would do my tight layout at printed page size, because now you know exactly what the reader will see when they get the book, right?
Yeah.
The sort of the feel of the page, because once you're working up, right, you're working on the 11 by 17 board, your field of vision can only take in half that board at one time. So
Right.
unless you're drawing and really standing and you have very, very long arms, you'll never be able to really grasp exactly what the full page experience is. And I thought that's really, really smart. So I started employing that
Hmm.
myself. And it seems like you do a version of that too. And that's why in my home there used to be a ginormous Xerox machine. No longer necessary,
Yeah.
of course.
I think about that all the time. Like
Yeah.
what I would do if I didn't have these tools at my disposal. But one of the things I like to do when I'm doing the at size sort of step is that's when I will do it, because I'm digital. I can just take a giant fat brush
Right.
and do all my spot blacks in there too.
Yeah.
So I do like a big test of that before I'm printing it out as well, so that I know like how the patterns of all the white
Mhm.
lights and darks are going to work.
Cool. Now let me ask you, because every artist, professional artist, has these moments. If we're lucky, we have them, more than once in a lifetime. When did you feel you had made, that an evolutionary leap where suddenly you go, oh, something clicks, right? And you're like, and the work improves by like 100-fold between
Right.
one page or one issue and the next. Where was that first one for you? And have you had more than one?
Oh, yeah, I feel like I've had one recently even.
Oh,
But
cool. Tell us about it.
uh, so I'm big into, I will read any book on drawing ever. And the most recent one that I had was I started reading the uh, gesture drawing books by Walt Stanchfield, who's
Huh?
a Disney animator. Do you know those ones?
Yeah,
Drawn to Life.
I got him.
and I was obsessed with. I mean, I knew about squash and stretch,
Yeah.
but I had never really tried that hard to make sure that I was employing it or at least understanding it. And I was going through those books, and I got really obsessed with that, and I started to really hit on some things that I thought were, really showed that. And so like the motion even pushed further than I ever thought I would be able to.
Yeah.
It was kind of getting into that, how I love Todd McFarlane, and
Yeah.
the reason being that I love the motion in his work. Like one of the things that's the thing he does best, I believe. And I started to finally get into that area where I could stretch a body to its limits without breaking it,
Yeah.
and without worrying about the anatomy getting in the way, which is something that happens quite a bit where, it's hard to let go of what you know
Yeah.
to be accurate. But so you're talking about the, what I always think is there was a period where I knew what I wanted my work to look like, but I couldn't figure out how to make it look like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had the taste. I knew where it should be. So I would work on a page, and I would just do it over and over and over because I was like, that's not right. That's not what I'm trying to do. And I think that the first time that I started to get the results that I had in my head were when I started doing the She-Hulk series. And I don't know what really happened. All of a sudden it clicked, and I felt comfortable drawing. I didn't feel like I was an imposter as much.
Okay.
Like I felt like I know what I'm doing. And one of the things that helped me get there was when I read the Arthur Adams Modern Masters book. I saw how he did his from layout to completion. And I started kind of employing a little bit of that. And his is a little excessive, the way that he. Have you seen his layouts? How they're basically.
Oh
finished.
yeah, they're finishes. Yeah.
But I don't know. Somehow that jogged something loose in my brain, and I was able to do that. And then another time, and I told you this before, but I had sent you stuff to, and you gave me a portfolio review.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you did was at the time I felt like I was floundering a little bit. It was when I was doing Uncanny Avengers. But you ended up doing it on Amazing Spider-Man: Renew Your Vows. But I was kind of lost for a minute, and I don't really know why. But you start questioning, why do I do it this way? Why don't I, do it some other way? Or why, like there's those guys like Chris Samnee out there that do this, really intelligent style where they don't. It's very minimal, and you're like, why can't I do that? And your review came back, and you kind of you were hammering me about, in a good way, about just leaning into the motion and movement of the stuff that I do. And it was like in my mind, I had never quite put that into words, what I was trying to do, and I was like, that's exactly what I want my work to look like. That's what I've always wanted to work like. That's the artist that I've always loved. And so from that point on, I feel like I just leaned into it, and the ultimate culmination of that was what we started doing on Venom, I feel like.
Oh, cool. I'm glad it was helpful. I mean, I got to tell you, when George Belliard at Marvel came to me and said, Ryan Stegman would like you to do a portfolio review of his work, and I'm like, what? Because Brian's a working professional, and he's like, no, he really feels like he'd like to have a review, and I was impressed beyond belief that here you are, you're a working pro, you're becoming a staple at Marvel, and you want to grow, you want to learn, and not for nothing, it's exactly the kind of thing that I would do and have done, right? As a working pro, just ask people, hey, can you sit down? I mean, I was never more terrified than when I met Howard Chaykin at a convention and asked Howard to review my work. I mean, because Howard is tough, but I know I needed it. And as a pro, you run the risk of like, we work inside a studio. We have four walls that we look at all day long. We stare at a blank page at the beginning of every day. And there are moments where we have bouts with our egos, right? Where we just like, why am I doing this? So this artist is better than I am. And like you say, that feeling of being an imposter. Oh man, I can so relate to that. It's a perfect way of saying it, right? When I'm like, I really can't draw. I can't draw like this guy, this gal.
Right.
It's just there's so many better people. Why am I? Why do people even want to read my stuff? And so putting yourself out there that maybe somebody's going to say something that crushes you and sends you to a
Right.
tailspin. It's tough enough when you're a beginner, right? But when you're a
Hmm.
pro, it's like, whoa, man, I don't know if I could spend the day sitting on my couch and crying about this. So
Right.
so the fact that you handed it in, I'm like, okay, and it took me a little while to get to it because I just had so much stuff on my plate. But your stuff, it's once you get to that pro level, trying to critique it, it's like, okay, now I'm kind of gonna have to get nitpicky, right?
Right.
Because there's you're doing everything right. So, but you don't want to hear that. I know you don't want to hear that. You
Right.
want to hear where can you improve, or where are your strong points, and
Right.
yeah, you lean into it, man. You're just the energy in your stuff is it's over the top, and it's you're one of the best action artists out there because of that. But you also have the storytelling chops. And when you were talking before about the Disney animators, right, and sort of breaking the figure,
Hmm.
and I think you really sort of nailed it when you said throwing out everything you know. That's the key, though, right? You have to know it. You have
Yeah.
to know it, right? So again, young artists that are watching this, don't throw away the figure. Learn it. You've got to learn your anatomy. You've got to figure this stuff out before you can throw it out and try to unlearn it. So
Right.
so a couple of tech questions here, man. So you looks like you work with a really soft lead, right? What were you working with?
That was a 2H. I think I
Really?
darkened up the screen for you though, so that
Okay.
it looks darker than it is, so that,
Okay.
just so that people could see the pencil
I
lines.
mean, I work with a 4H, so anything is softer to me than than that.
Do you? I have a question for you about
Yeah.
that because I've been obsessed with this lately. Do you do your finishes in 4H?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's like an engraving tool. The reason I do that is because I have like mitts for hands, and
Mhm.
I just smudge lead everywhere. So the 4H
Okay.
keeps the page. Now, in truth, if I'm inking myself digitally, I don't need the 4H. But when I worked with inkers in the past, I found that I would just smudge all the detail away. So
Hmm.
it would make life easier for the inker if I used the 4H, as long as
Right.
I didn't engrave the page. So and what tool are you using right now to ink with here?
I believe it's called a Pentel color brush.
Okay.
Bought it on Jet Pens,
Yeah.
the place where I get all my stuff, and it this has a reservoir of ink right
Right.
here,
Right.
so I squeeze it into the tip, and
Okay. Cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like
There's
to ink with a
there,
brush on sketches.
oh, really? Okay. You ever use a pen at all?
Not on sketches usually, but if I'm doing pages, yes, I
Okay.
will use a pen.
Yeah.
I like G pens, the nibs, and Maru nibs,
Uh,
which are the Maru nib is basically the old 102. It's just a little better made now,
right.
the Japanese ones.
And did anybody school you on inking, or you just sort of learned this on your own? Because I'm a terrible inker, and I never learned.
I I actually so I'm not, I don't think I'm a very good inker. um,
You have more
that's
control than I do, that's for sure. I don't have that kind of
yeah.
control.
I I definitely learned through trial and error, and one of the things that also made Venom kind of a hit I feel like for me was when I was about to start that, I'd been inking myself for years, but I felt like I would constantly change styles,
Uh huh.
and because I'm just antsy like that. I mean, I see you do it too sometimes, where you just like want to try something different.
Yeah, I do it a lot.
Yeah,
So,
and it was causing I was doing it like in the middle of issues, which was, I don't know. But anyway, so CB before we started on Venom was like, I really think you should use an inker. And I was like, what? This is insulting.
right. How dare you?
um, yeah. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, all right, well, we'll give it a shot. We'll get somebody to do a couple sample pages.
Hmm?
I won't like it, and then I'll just, I'll have appeased him, and we'll go on. And then they brought in JP Mayer,
Hmm?
who did the sample pages, and he kind of has that. He had been doing inks, so they showed me his samples, and they were kind of this style that he was doing stuff over like guys like Ivan Rice and stuff
Hmm?
like that, which I love those guys, but that's not really what I do.
Right.
And then they were like, well, he really wants to do more of like that sort of Top Cow style from, that Mark Silvestri thing. And I was like, those are his favorites. He just is working on what he's working on now.
Uh-huh.
And so he started doing that stuff on me and I was like, oh my God, that's how I've always wanted my stuff to look. That's how I
Yeah.
would ink if I was patient, you know?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I had a teammate that I felt like really made my work look even better. And I got to focus on the pencils and, everybody was better for it.
That's awesome. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna go to split screen here. You keep doing your thing, man. I'm gonna go to some fan questions because I know we
Okay.
got them. Okay. Uh, let's see here. Let's see what folks are asking. The boards are lighting up. All right. First question here is from Zach Goyette. For both of
Hmm.
you, what has been the biggest change at Marvel and in the comics industry since you started at Marvel? That's an interesting question.
For me, not much. I mean, other than that I have a place in it. uh, but I kind of came in, uh, I mean, it's been a while now. What, like 13 years ago.
Mhm.
But I started on lower tier things and worked my way up. But everything's pretty similar in the way that everything works. We've gone into more of the double shipping and all that stuff. But as far as my job is concerned and how it is for me working every day from home, it's pretty much exactly as it was. I feel like you probably went through a different change than I did.
Um, no, things aren't that, I haven't really changed that much. I mean, it's just a different way of sometimes conveying the stories, right? I mean, digital's
Mhm.
become a big part of it. Social media's become a big part of it, right? But I don't think things inherently have changed. We still tell stories one page at a time, right? Panel by
Mhm.
panel. Um, and we're still telling, great heroic stories. So the only thing that changes is the part of the audience gets older and a new audience starts to come in, and so,
Mhm.
uh, but that's always been the case, right? I mean, when I
Right.
started as editor in chief in 2000, there was an older audience that wanted their books a certain way, and there was a new audience that was coming in that wanted their books a certain way. So it's the constant ebb and flow of the Sisyphus stone,
Mhm.
which is publishing. Let's see who we got here. Emilio Cabrera. Is that Emilio? Yeah. Where does your inspiration come from, or ideas to build on what you're drawing?
That's a really tough question. I think about that sometimes because I know that I can see something in my head, right?
Hmm.
I don't feel like I see it fully. Like I feel like there are guys that you watch them draw and you're like, oh, he's just drawing what he sees in his head. That's
Yep.
incredible. I get glimpses, um, and then I think it's just like it all feel it, that one of the things that I love about drawing is that feeling when you get into a drawing and you're just completely engulfed in it
Yeah.
and you're just feeling things and it's making you do things and you don't know why you're doing them. So like sometimes I'm thinking about a texture or something I've held in my hands before, stuff like that, and it just kind of all flows out of you. But it's not always easy to get into that flow state, but when you do, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. When it happens, man, I equate it to. I mean, you've worked a day job, so you probably know this, right? When you have that drive that you do, Monday
Hmm.
through Fridays, you get in the car, and wherever it may be that you're going, it's a daily drive. You get in your car and you get to your destination, and you do it so much that when you get to your destination one day, you realize I remember getting in my car and I remember nothing else about the drive in
Hmm.
between. And it's kind
Hmm.
of like, I mean, for me, it's kind of like that when I'm in sort of a flow. It's just, I start it, and then suddenly I look up and it's 8 hours later, and I have
Right.
no idea how I got from the point where I started to the point where I am. And I wish I had more dates like that, which actually gives me a
Hmm.
question for you. I mean, do you ever run into, you know, a place where you're just having, I'm not going to call it a block because again, I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but you ever run into a situation where suddenly you just, you can't make those eyes line up. That was a big one for me, right? The eyes aren't lining
Hmm.
up. Every time I reverse the page, it looks wrong, or something like that, where you just like, "Argh, it's not happening today." Do you run into that? And by the way, and what do you do if you do run into that?
So I don't as much. I feel I've always felt like the time between those times expands as you get further along.
Right,
So now it's like it feels like once every 3 months I'll
right,
have a day like that.
right.
Um, But when that day comes, I get real frustrated. I go and exercise or something because I can't stand it anymore.
Right.
And then um, I'll walk away from it for a little bit, and sometimes I'll come back and I can get it going. Or if I can't, I'll just pick up some. I'll just draw something for fun for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I'll just grab another sheet of paper and just draw something that is easy for me, and that it will help me to just kind of like get my blood pressure down because I'm gonna start tearing up the paper or
Right.
whatever. And
Yeah.
somehow that works. I don't really understand the science behind it, but it definitely, like, just drawing something will help you get through those difficult times, I feel like.
Yeah, I remember as a young artist when those days would happen. Uh, Before I knew that I could just walk away from it for a little bit, and I would just
Yeah.
try to beat the drawing up. And I remember the
Yep.
feeling of like, what if I never get it back? What if
Right.
I hit the wall and this is it? And then now it becomes fear based, right? It's like
Hmm.
but clearly you've learned also to just walk away from the thing,
Yeah.
which is the best thing you can do at that point. So let's see, we got another one here. Uh, Dimi Petrakis wants to know which character was the most difficult to draw, and who's your favorite to draw?
Um, my favorite to draw is a tie between Venom and Spider-Man. Venom recently got moved up to that list where I have to admit it because it was always my stock answer to say Spider-Man.
Right.
Um, and my most difficult is Iron Man.
Ah, exactly.
Uh,
Yes, anything with metal. Oh,
yes, metal, and the fact that he's the hardest one. Like we were talking about before, bending and breaking their
yeah.
bodies. You feel really. I can't do it with him
Mhm.
because you're like, he's made of metal. Like,
Yeah.
you have this feeling in yourself. Like I. So it's always like I feel like I end up drawing him kind of stiff.
Yeah. To me, it's Iron Man, and then to add a level of complexity, any character that has iron and ribbing, like Colossus, right? That ribbing
Uh,
in the such a huge pain to draw, right? Because you got to add sort of the highlight to the ribbing to make sure that it reads as being 3 dimensional and actual ribbing in the metal. Man, it drives me
mhm.
nuts. Uh, let's see here.
Galactus is up there too.
Oh yeah. Getting the helmet right, getting the
Hmm.
wings in the helmet so that they line up and they don't look weird. A very underrated but very tough character to draw. Okay, so this is a question for both of us. From Genesis. Everyone has definitive looks for certain characters in their minds, but as artists, does working on a character during extended runs change how you envision them, and if so, how? You're getting great questions, dude. These are awesome.
So he's saying that does me working on Venom for a while change the way that I view Venom?
Or yeah, I guess, or
Like
just
the
working on
the
a character.
definitive look.
Yeah, definitive look. And also maybe do you go into each? I'm gonna amplify the question by saying, do you go into each project thinking I'm gonna change my style a little bit, because I do that sometimes. I'm gonna
Oh
change
yeah,
my style a little
absolutely.
bit to suit not just necessarily the character, but the writer and the tone of this project that you're doing.
Mhm.
So there you go. That's the question.
I so I don't know that I consciously decide that I'm going to change the way that I do it. I think there's a little bit of that, but sometimes I feel like it just happens organically because you're just feeling what you're working on.
Yeah.
I guess that's something that I keep coming back to is there is some sort of like feeling it out while you're working on something that changes the way that you approach something. Like if you like when I was doing Uncanny Avengers, there was definitely a different look to that book because it was written by Jerry Duggan, who is a comedy writer,
Right.
and he kind of had that. There were also dark moments in it, which I felt like I kind of like would go back and forth between what I was trying to do in that. I think, and as for Venom, I do feel like uh, the my view of how he is drawn is changed because of the route that we went with the more human looking one. I
Right.
don't think that that's how he should always be drawn for sure. Like I would say that one of my favorite Venom images ever, if not my favorite, is your cover to Venom #1, the
Uh,
Remender and Tony Moore book. Uh, and I'd love to do that hulked out Venom at some point. So,
yeah,
but
I think that was the first and only time I've drawn Venom, but that was a
yeah,
fun cover to do.
oh,
Uh,
it's awesome.
Thank you, man. Um, let's see. Let's see. Hookshot, the Scott Pilgrim stand. Okay. Hookshot 18. Uh, Venom has had a lot of colors outlining his black. Hang on, let me read this right. Venom has had a lot of colors outlining his black body over the years. Blue, gray, and red-blue combo in the animated series, and purple because of the Ultimate Comics. Wanted to be different and cool. Which of these is your favorite, Ryan?
Uh, well, I have a soft spot for that really royal blue, that electric blue that they used to do.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it makes any sense because I do think of Venom as he's black,
Mhm.
right? Like he's not blue.
Yeah.
So I love it when he has that blue. I think it looks cool. But really, I like him to be. I like Venom to be almost void of color.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
that's kind of that's the tone that we want
Like
for
that.
this Venom stuff.
What's that thing? That Vanta Black, right? That
Yes.
reflects no light, right?
Yep. Exactly.
So, all right, here we go. Spencer Taylor, how awesome is your return to Venom going to be? The way you talk about it, it sounds like some of your best work yet. Thanks. I'm a big fan of your work. So, how awesome is it
Um,
going to
it's going to be really freaking awesome.
be?
There's a lot of double page spreads going on
Right.
to the point where I'm tearing my hair out a little bit, but they're every time I complete one, which takes longer than you want them to, but when they're finally done, you're like, that's the best thing I've ever drawn.
That's
You
awesome.
know,
Yeah. So is it going to be awesome or is it going to be dope?
it's going
Because,
to be dope and awesome. Dope according to Donnie.
right.
I'll go with awesome or rad according to me.
Okay. How many times have you heard Donnie say the word dope?
Well, he says it in rapid succession. He says
Right.
dope, dope, dope.
Dope, dope, dope. Right. All right. Let's see. We have some questions that just came in. Um, okay. It's actually a good one. Here we go. Hey Joe, I'm a third year college student, want to break into the editing publishing world. Are there any tips you can give? What types of internships does Marvel have? Marvel does have internships though, but I think you have to apply for them through Disney. Disney has a portal where they state where their internships are available and other things like that. Um, the best advice to breaking in as an editor is learn the classics. I found that in my history at Marvel, some of the best editors were actually drama majors or acting majors in their schools, and they came in because of their major, they came in fully equipped with knowledge of the classics and of how screenplays are written. And I'm not saying you have to do that as a major, but it really does help. Learn to write yourself. Learn to understand what a writer has to go through. Take a few art classes, some art history classes, art appreciation classes, so you can also understand how artists may think. I mean, there's no real definitive road to becoming an editor or an assistant editor, whatever it may be. But this is some of the few hopefully useful tools. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, awesome question. This comes from James Siegel. What is the one thing you guys are looking to do differently or change in your lives once we get back to quote unquote normal? Ryan?
You mean like something that we're looking forward to getting back to?
Yeah, or to do differently.
Oh, um, well, number one, the thing I'm most excited to do is go back to going to restaurants. That's like my favorite thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
Um, but to do differently, um, I don't know. We've had a lot more time with the kids where we've watched movies with them and all that kind of stuff. And I think that I'd like to keep that going because
Yeah.
you kind of bogged down by work and everyday life, and you forget to spend time doing stuff like that. So
Yeah. You,
hopefully keeping that going.
Yeah, dinners with my daughters have definitely been great. We didn't get to do a lot of that beforehand, and,
Hmm.
especially when she's off to school. But things to do differently, I think, I know for a fact, it's an unfortunate, it's probably going to be a while before I do a convention, even when they start kicking up. Just because, you want to make sure that, you know, everybody comes into a lot of contact with everyone at shows,
Hmm.
and we're handling books and signing stuff for people. So maybe they'll figure out a better way to to build a mousetrap with conventions, but right now I could see that being, at least for me, it's going to be, I don't do a lot of shows to begin with. I do 2 a year, maybe 3 a year, but I could certainly see myself rethinking that.
Mhm.
But I'm actually looking forward to, when I walk my dogs, or I can't even bring them to daycare because you don't want dogs mixing because you just don't know. It's like people, right? If someone has it, so my dogs see other dogs in the street and they're like, oh, we want to play, and no, nobody can play right now. So just those little things.
Mhm.
Looking forward to getting back to. Let's see, we got another one here. Um, this comes from. Oh, it's a question for you. Question for you from Knight of Ren 789. Question for Ryan. What is your Mount Rushmore of Marvel artists, either contemporary or past artists? I think you've talked a little bit about this, but if you were to do a Mount Rushmore of Marvel artists, who would be? How many presidents are on Rushmore? Four, right? There's four.
4, yeah.
All right. Who are the four?
Um, well, you,
Oh,
and that's
no,
not
no,
just
no,
me
no,
sucking up. That's
no, no, no.
absolutely true. Your Daredevil run was seminal in my
Not top four, man. No
experience.
way. No way.
For
No way.
me,
All
well, I
right.
mean,
Oh, all right, all right, all
okay,
right, all right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead. Do you? You
Um,
do you.
I will say, I'm gonna leave McFarlane out off because it was more Spawn for me than, I loved his
Right.
Spider-Man, but we'll leave that one out so that I can put Jack Kirby on there because I feel like he has to be on there.
Yeah, you got it.
Um, Joe Madureira was very important to me. Um, and let's see, God, between Jim Lee and Michael Golden.
No.
Oh my God, this is too hard. John Buscema?
All
I mean,
right.
John Buscema has to be on it. Never mind. My Mount Rushmore has 6 people.
All right.
And we go with
That's a lot of
Golden.
carving, man. A lot of dynamite and carving. Cool. All right. Let me see. We got Carlos Zapata is asking. All right. He's got a two-parter here. Part one. What did you both eat for breakfast? What'd you have for breakfast, man?
I skipped breakfast. I haven't eaten yet today.
Yeah, I skipped breakfast too, but I got up extremely early this morning, so I was like, I'm gonna peter out during this interview with Ryan. So I had myself a classic PB&J on white bread.
Oh,
Perfect.
the best.
Yeah, it's funny about that. For years, I played baseball, and I picked up playing baseball again and played in men's senior league several years ago. And I could never find the food that I could eat before a game that would like not like feel like a rock in my stomach. And then I was
Hmm.
watching these videos of ball players that I were interviewing, saying, "Hey, what do you eat before a game?" And they were like PB&J, like 75% of them. I'm like, why didn't I know that? It sounds like a perfect thing to eat when you need to, get a quick boost of energy. Okay, part two. What type of chairs do you use when you're working?
I'm sitting in a Herman Miller Aeron chair that I've had for over a decade now.
Me too. That's all I've
Hmm.
got are the Herman Millers. I suffer from ridiculous back problems, so
Hmm.
it's I still do, but it's the only thing that's a saving grace. But always up for suggestions if somebody knows anything better. All right, three. What comic book do you like to reread? Hmm.
I've reread the Alan Moore Swamp Thing a million times. I don't know why, but I really love that series.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, so I don't know how many times I've reread it, but a lot
yeah,
is the answer.
yeah. Alan Moore stuff is. I think Alan Moore stuff is some of the best stuff even reread, even when you know it. So
Yeah.
definitely Watchmen for me. Uh,
Oh,
and I go back to and I go back to Miracle Man.
yeah, oh
Those
yeah.
they're seminal works,
Hmm.
um, and they really age well. I mean, and the thing with Miracle Man, of course, is you have to. I read it at a time where all those ideas were fresh and new, right? And so many of the ideas have been picked apart and done in other comics and in TV shows and stuff. But man, it was just revolutionary, and eye opening at the time. I think that's it. I think that's all we got for questions, man. So, dude, you are so insanely fast. It drives me nuts.
Just got to use a big fat brushing, block everything out.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? Also, I think some of this, because I know I suffer from this, is having the ability to let it go and say it's done, right?
Hmm.
I know a lot of artists, and like I said, I suffer from it on occasion where I just don't want to let it go because it's not right. Something about it is not right. Something about it is not right. I finished a page last night, and if I send you the page, you'll go like, yeah, it's perfectly fine. It's done. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's not done. It's missing something. It's missing something. And then it occurred to me this morning what it was missing. So now I'm going to go back into that page. And I wish I had more of that, like, no, it's good. Let it go. And because what I'm going to add to it, no one's going to care about. I know it. No one's going to notice it. But I sometimes get myself locked into this sort of mania, especially when there's no deadline to what it is that really what I'm doing. Actually, there is a deadline. I'm just choosing to ignore it.
What are you working on, Joe?
Can't tell you. Can't tell you. Also, it is right. I have a, and this is just sort of my own personal advice. If someone asked me, creators were asking, I have a thing about never talking about something until it's a done deal, right? So I'm going to vamp a little bit because you're still working, and it's advice that was given to me many years ago when I was a musician. I'm going to go to full screen on you here because nobody needs to see me while I'm talking. There we go. And I remember I was a musician, breaking in. I had my band, the whole thing, and there was a band. There was a place called Nino's Studios in Long Island, and it was an incredible rehearsal studio, and it had. For Long Island, it had professional clientele. Twisted Sister and Joe and Jet would go there, and there was a band that played out of there called Dreamer. And Dreamer was a band that was on the cusp of becoming a major label band. It didn't quite work out for them, but they were the band that we sort of looked up to. We wanted to be them, and their manager was a guy by the name of Sal Di Benedetto. It's a great name. You say that, Sal Di Benedetto. And Sal, Sal was a great guy, and I remember we were at a bar one night, and he was advising us. He was good friends. We were good friends with all these guys, and he was advising us, on how to build our careers, and then he saw a friend of his, a mutual musician friend, at the bar. He went over, talked to the guy, and then he came back to the table that I was sitting at, and he said, "Joey, don't ever do that." And I'm like, "Don't ever do what, Sal?" And he said, "You see that guy there? I saw him 6 months ago. And 6 months ago, he said to me," I asked him, "How's everything going?" And he said, "Oh, we're working on a deal. We're very close to having a deal with, I don't know, Capitol Records, somebody like that, a major label. We're very close to that deal. We're about to sign it, da 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 da." And I said, "That's great." So now I see him now here several months later, and I said, "Hey, how's that deal with Capitol Records?" And he said, "Oh, it fell through." Right? Now, here's the secret. 99% of the time, these deals are going to fall through. So he said, never talk about something until it's signed and done and finished. Because what happens is, like, I work in the music industry and I understand how these deals go. But if you say this to enough people, they don't understand it, and they view you as someone who doesn't complete something, someone who's constantly failing at things. He's like, don't talk about stuff until it's done, because this way, at least when somebody asks you how's it going, you can say we're signed to Capitol Records. So I've always kept that in the back of my mind, and it served me well in many times, because there have been times I was very close to having a movie deal, times I was close to getting a big project, times I was, and I always heard Sal's voice say to me, "Don't talk about it until it's done," and I didn't, and those things would fall through. So it's I always find my personal, philosophy is just, talk about it when it's right. So it's my long way of saying I can't tell you what I'm doing, because it's not finished, haven't announced it. It's still in its infancy, but I'm having fun doing it, and when I'm done, I'm done.
Yep.
So
that sounds good to me.
Yep. And
I think
you look like you're done, dude.
I did. I signed it and everything. The Stegosaurus is there.
That is beautiful, man. Absolutely gorgeous. I hate you. I really hate you. And again, but look, even your sketch it's coming at me, right? The posture, the lean. I mean, you can take the tongue out of the equation, right? The just he's leaning in. He's moving forward. I love it, man. Absolutely love it. So dude, I want to thank you. Change your camera so we can see you. Come on.
Okay.
I want to see you.
Takes a second.
All right. There you are. Cool.
My
So,
hat around some build picture.
and by the way, thanks for you guys who don't know, I had Ryan put black tape on his hat just because it's a Detroit Tigers logo. But so you're a fan. You're a baseball fan, right, dude?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're hurting right now.
Unfortunately, right now. Yeah.
It's well with the Tigers, it'd be unfortunate when the season starts too. But that's a whole other
Yeah.
story. At least they're playing. Um,
I'm a free agent right now. I'm looking for a new team.
Mets, man, come on board. We're doing
All
okay.
right.
We're doing it. Don't do the Yankees though. That's like that's not
Could never
good.
do the Yankees.
No. So, dude, thank you so much for coming on, man. Anything you want to say to the fans out there? Anything else you want to plug? You got your podcast, right? You got books coming out?
Yeah, just check out the podcast, Stegman and His Amazing Friends. Find me on Twitter, where I say inane stuff like Venom is better than Watchmen.
Right. What's your Twitter handle?
Ryan Stegman, all one word.
Cool.
Same with Instagram. That's about it.
Cool, brother. Thanks so much, man. Hey, listen, stay safe. Best to you and the family. And when this is all over, I still don't know if I'll hug you, but we'll do the
Yeah.
yeah. Good to see you, man.
Sounds good.
All right, brother. You be good,
All right.
and we will talk soon. All right.
All right. Yep.
So thanks.
All right.
There you go, gang. Thank you so much. Thanks to Ryan. He's just one of the true greats right now in the comics industry, and just overall, you could tell he's just one of the nicest people, and someone that clearly editors want to work with because he's just so easygoing, he's so energetic, and he delivers just great work. So, who's on tap for? I'm gonna try to do 3 this week. This morning in the shower, I was debating. I'm like, doing 3 a week is a lot, especially with my day job. I'll try to do 3 this week and hopefully keep it up. If not, I may go down to 2. Don't know yet. Don't yell at me. Or maybe you want it to go down to 2. So we'll see. But our guest for this Wednesday, don't have a time yet, but this Wednesday is going to be none other than my buddy, Dan Panosian, the urban barbarian himself. Artist, designer, writer, you name it. Dan is going to talk about his career, which is way beyond just comics. I mean, Dan has done everything from working in movies to acting to being a model. He was a model. We'll dig up some of those photos. But also, he is one of the greats right now, I think, in the industry. He's just doing some outstanding work. And does everything from penciling, inking, coloring, typography, you name it. I also hate him. I kind of hate him because he can do all that stuff. So again, thanks guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day today. Wash your hands. Tell your loved ones you love them with all your heart. And we will see you guys on Wednesday, as always. To be continued. Take care. Bye.